Everyone's afraid of something. Little children are afraid of the dark. Most rational human beings are afraid of spiders. I am particularly afraid of bad storms. And everyone here, no doubt about it, is most afraid of their secrets being found. Don't worry, dear listeners, I have a solution to that, and that solution comes with learning how to beat fear at its own game. Let's play! Put on your disguise, pour yourself a cup of tea, and take a step between silver and glass to a world of homebrew magic where secrets are power and daytime reality need not apply. For those of you under the radar and in the know, I'm Amanda Lockridge, and you're listening to the Noctuary. Welcome back to the Noctuary, dear cryptographers and cryptarchs. This episode we have two special guests who have brought their expertise in film to offer us a little insight into the artistry of terror. And I have prepared a special challenge for you, something of an age-old tradition in our community, a sort of rite of passage for you and your local society, something that's especially good for a Halloween celebration. But first, allow me to give you just a taste of one of our hallmark trades, the art of the cipher, coming up. Oh, this subject is fun, because you make it up as you go along. A secret signal need only be agreed on for it to work. Hiding a message is as simple as replacing one alphabet with another, and if you're particularly savvy, you can even assemble a dire insult to someone using a bouquet of very meaningful flowers. The world of secret codes is a world of modified language. In this world, a particular piece of jewelry can signal to others that it's time to unleash the confetti, or a book can be hidden by translating it into your own version of Pig Latin. I've taught you about misdirection, of shifting the normal, and of illusions. Now it's time to talk about the real tricks of hiding and finding, and that starts with a cipher. Perhaps everyone I grew up with played with a cipher wheel when they were little. I had a wizardology book that included a whole chapter on wizard codes. Artemis Fowl was a favorite book of mine, and it had encoded fairy text at the bottom edge of all of its pages, which I gleefully translated when I was 11. I wasted so much time in middle school. But I'm sure you'd rather know about the ciphers that work, ciphers that ordinary viewers can't crack, and those, my dear listeners, require layers. A basic cipher works like this. You take an ordinary alphabet and you replace each letter with a symbol of your choice. An easy way to demonstrate this is to take a document and put it all in wingdings. The meaning is hidden, but it's only under one layer of protection. All you have to do is change the font. Return the letters to their original form, and voila, the code is broken. Better codes will rearrange letters, like one cipher that puts spaces between every 3 letters, or adds null letters every so often, or uses symbols for whole words. But better still are the ciphers that don't make themselves known. What if you didn't even know the text was there? There's a reason why invisible ink was such a commodity in history. Spy masters from the Islamic Empire to Sir Walsingham under Queen Elizabeth used inks made of alum or lemon juice to write concealed letters, hidden right under the null letters or decoy letters. But history has already been there and done that. Want to know a better way? I've shown you a few already. You can hide things in an acrostic by writing a message using the first letter of every word or the first word of every line. You can hide things in sound, in hex code, in musical notes. Once you make your system and apply your meaning, your message can hide in a sheet of music or in an image on your computer, or a file that requires a spectrogram to decipher. Getting a little advanced? Well, perhaps. There's always the risk that people will realize that there's something more to your creation than meets the eye, especially if you weren't all that good at hiding that you're part of, well, our community. So using advanced encoding, layers and layers of encoding, can help make your code uncrackable, even if it is discoverable. But I've got a dirty secret on how to hide your encoded secrets. Yes, dear listeners, yet another layer to hide under. Misdirection can draw the eye, illusion can confuse the eye, ciphers can confound the eye, but I know of something that can prevent the eye from looking in the first place. Want to know what it is? Fear. All right, time for a disclaimer. It's not uncommon for members of our community to need to go beyond the community in order to pick the brain of an expert. That's what's happened here. This episode, I sought out the help of 2 individuals for your benefit in order to share their knowledge of the macabre and the mortifying with all of you. First up, one Dr. Virginia Bonner, professor of film at Clayton State University. After, one Jason Spector, a horror film connoisseur with a most appropriate name. Let's take a gander. So here we are, sitting in the office of the Music Education Building at Clayton State University, and I'm here with Dr. Bonner of the Film Department. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Dr. Virginia Bonner. I am Professor of Film Studies here at Clayton State University.
Thank you very much, and let's begin.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, to begin, I want to clear up a few terms. What would you say is the difference between suspense and horror?
As far as a genre of film goes?
In general, yeah.
Suspense is probably designed to make you more nervous and concerned for our characters, as opposed to horror, which, depending on the subgenre, is either like a monster movie or a slasher film or something like that, but there's more abject terror invited. Suspense is rarely going to give you abject terror.
So it's the difference between, I suppose, fear of uncertainty and the monsters right in front of you.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. The goal, of course, with a horror film is never to put the monster right in front of you, but where is the monster is coming, maybe. Yeah, okay.
So there definitely is a threat as to there might be a threat.
Right. The monster you want to delay until the last possible moment, but you know there's a monster there somewhere.
And how do you suppose is one of the better ways to go about that build-up?
In a horror film, you want to delay the visible of the monster as long as possible. So you might hear off-screen sounds, which are usually the most productive use of sound in the horror film, in addition to, of course, the soundtrack or whatever. You withhold the visual and imply the monster's presence either through what used to be called eye camera, or sort of that shaky cam spying, or your protagonist knows that the monster is around and nobody believes them, of course, and you have to eventually confirm that, confirming that the monster does exist and is hunting them all. Jump scares will increase that after a little while, and then finally either an immediate, startle reveal or a gradual reveal, depending.
So the more senses you invite, the more effective it is.
There's kind of a crescendo to it, and usually some kind of unresolved ending if you're...
Now, what would you say are some dirty secrets in generating suspense? I've heard of the use of subsonic sound below 20 hertz.
Yeah. Gaspar Noé did this in Irreversible, and it's not technically a horror film, but it's terrifying. The sounds that he uses throughout, but especially during this really horrific rape scene. Yeah, that, or either a just any kind of low frequency kind of hum, that kind of vibrating sense will give a sense of either tremolo or terror or just vibration.
What about use of subtle visuals? Use of lighting sets that don't quite match up to what we think would geometrically make sense?
Right. All of that comes from a movement called German Expressionism that is...
my favorite.
Oh, it's brilliant. I love it too. And so do folks today, like Tim Burton, certainly. But there was almost an immediate transfer from German Expressionist lighting style, very low-key, very shadowy, hard contrasts between either a brightly lit area and then a very just complete shadow, partly out of economic constraints at the time, that if you've got a complete shadow there, just drop a big velvet drape or something that absorbs all the light and you don't have to put anything there. But it also, of course, gives that incredible mood that German Expressionism creates with the hard contrast and the hard fall-off, which was part of the psychology of the German Expressionist era of that all those unknowns after the war and the post-traumatic stress that everyone was enduring. So from that, the lead straight into horror films. I mean, the influence was immediate. Where you see like 1930 Frankenstein, James Whale's use of that incredibly expressionist lighting. Nosferatu, of course, used it in silent era as well. So that translates into most neo-noir horror of today as well.
And even the movement in the music then was incredible. The unresolved cadences, the chords that just went nowhere.
Yeah.
All of it made you so uneasy because in the Western canon we're used to having those neat patterns of build-up and resolution.
Right.
Mess with that and it throws you off.
Unsettling, really unsettling and disturbing, which works for horror. Because
so it really matters to set up a pattern and then to break it to create unease. So thank you very much for being here, Dr. Bonner.
Thank you.
It was very interesting talking about the subject, specifically as it pertains to film. There's even more questions in my head now, but we have no more time, so...
Understood, and thank you. I've learned a lot as well. Always happy to talk film.
A prince once thought to lock me out within his abbey of his devout, a feast he held with many halls, with many colors of windows and walls. For half a year they feasted there, safe from all the world's despair, but little known to them I had already entered within. 7 rooms of 7 schemes, the last of which was red and black. Through 7 rooms I walked and watched, as all succumbed, one by one, without a sound, without a scream. For Prospero was never safe, nay, never safe from me. What am I? Once you know, you'll know the meaning of this one. Who was my writer, and what did he fear?
So now we have our second guest. You know me already, so let's introduce Jason Spector, local expert on films. Hello.
Hello to you too. I'm definitely an expert on films, on horror films specifically, so...
Definitely a special area of interest for you. So let's begin with talking about what's the most interesting practical effect that you've ever seen in a horror film?
I guess I'll say 2 movies. There was two big movies with practical effects that really sold it for me as a young kid, and they're actually what sparked my interest in the horror movies. The first one was Evil Dead 2, and the first Evil Dead was very groundbreaking as far as its practical effects go. All the stuff was so extreme in it, all the blood and gore was so extreme in it that I think it was banned in like the UK and a bunch of other places. So it already had that start, but I actually first saw the second one before I saw the first one. And the second one just had a lot of cool, it was very creative in its practical effects. Like, there's a scene with Bruce Campbell. He's in a cabin. If you haven't seen the movie, it's pretty much Bruce Campbell in a cabin, and he goes up to a mirror and he puts his hands on the sides of the mirror, like looking at himself, telling himself, I'm fine. And then all of a sudden his image comes through the mirror, grabs him by the neck and says, I don't think so. Like,
nice.
And it's done practically. It's pretty obvious that the way they did it was they had Bruce Campbell on the other side of the mirror, and they had an actor that looked like him from behind, and all it was an open space, and he just came through it.
Are there any films you can name that stayed scary after the first watching, even knowing what was coming?
It's tough to think of a movie that the second time I watched it, I was equally as scared. There's one it's a Japanese one called Reincarnation. It's a very interesting movie, but the visuals of it are so unsettling. It's a story about this guy making a movie about a massacre that happened at a hotel, and he's hired a bunch of actors to play all the victims, and he has this vision for the movie. But as he's making the movie, some of the actors are experiencing these weird visions, and the idea is that in their past life, some of them were involved in that murder, and it's their past ghost is like kind of taking over and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting concept. It's by the guy who did The Grudge. So
really effective horror, repetitive horror requires layers.
Yes. Well, I think what the mental jump scares are simple, I think. Like, jump scares, you get scared, then you can laugh about it, and you can do all that. But if you want to go for that movie that people come back and they feel the anxiety or feel the fear every time, you have to go for those.
And maybe not the same kind of fear, but certainly dread.
Yes, and dread.
I suppose, what are some of the dirty little secrets towards building up anxiety, helping to turn it up a little more? Like subsonic sound, strobe lights? Things that might also be effective outside of a film.
Well, yeah. I mean, strobe lights, I'd say lighting in general is a big thing, definitely. So strobe lights can add to confusion. Again, I'm thinking of Jacob's Ladder. There's a scene with strobe light and
confusion is a good word to touch on for this subject.
Yeah, exactly. So strobe lighting, when you strobe the light, like, just in general, if I'm at a dance and someone puts a strobe on, you're looking around and it looks cool because everyone's, what you're doing is you're seeing flash frames, yes. And so it in a way confuses your brain. So if you do that in a movie, it's going to have somewhat the same effect.
And in horror, it throws off your ability to stop and think, which would reduce your anxiety.
Yes, exactly.
Let's see, and for the last question, what's the best example you can think of for a film where the terror is almost entirely in the viewer's head? It scares almost entirely by suggestion.
The Babadook is one of the more recent ones that did that. You never really get a good, clear view of the Babadook. I mean, you get imagery and everything like that, but that's a good one where it didn't depend on, Hollywood's like, oh, let's put the creature like right in front of everyone, let them get a good look at him. No, that one.
I'm told the Blair Witch did much the same thing.
Oh yeah, and the Blair Witch definitely. Well, the Blair Witch, the original one, yeah, they didn't show anything, but I think it was pretty much like a pile of sticks. Like, that's one of the.
And the context made it scary.
Yes, the context definitely made it scary. I think that's probably the most effective way to get the scares is let the viewer imagine for themselves.
So build the story and give the viewer just enough evidence to suspect it might be real.
Yeah, exactly. And there's an older movie that would have been good had it's called Boogeyman. It was a very good build. Like, you never saw the Boogeyman. Like, he was always in like a dark closet, or you thought that a pile of clothes was him. Like, it was really well done. And then at the very end of the movie, you get a glimpse of him and he looks so goofy. It ruins the whole movie, but like they had that build going.
But it was so frightening at first.
Yeah, it was very frightening because you're imagining in your head this whole thing. It really missed an opportunity with that mental, what does it look like in my head kind of situation.
So that is all the questions I have. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
The most dangerous games. The most dangerous games are games that involve more imagination than anything else. I'm referring, of course, to games that are not at all dangerous, but they are frightening. They're a special pastime of mine this spooky time of year, particularly for thrills and partly for the skills. In our community, we believe in continuing play well into adulthood because it continues to develop our ability to think on our feet and adapt to situations. And it's especially useful for immunizing oneself against fear. Some games are especially fun. There's one called Sardines, for example, that I played with my youth group. It's played in a large building, at night, in the dark. One person is it. The it hides, and everybody else silently searches for them. When they find the one who's it, they hide with them, until everyone is packed into the hiding place like sardines in a can. There are plenty of other games, other similar fun group games like Ghosts in the Graveyard, but then there are other games, spookier games, ones you can play by yourself, against an entity you supposedly summon, and games you can play where a real person becomes the monster. I once told you about Slender in real life. That's an old favorite, but there's also the Midnight Man, Hide and Seek Alone, and other dangerous games that are only as dangerous as the player makes them. They're only as frightening and suspicious as one's own imagination allows them to be. So if we know ghosts aren't real, if we know the supernatural is not the immediately natural, ask yourself, why are these games still so frightening? So, that in mind, I dare you to play a little something in the dark,
Have fun. When the mask comes off and the teacup is empty, make sure to spare a glance back at the looking glass. In a show concerning secrets, there are secrets to be found. Now ask yourself, was there anything you might have missed? I'll leave you to your pondering and to add to noctuaries of your own. Happy scheming!